small class on some insights on Parashat Behar and Bechukotai. This week's Parsha, it's a double Parsha. So Behar literally means on the mountain. And why does it start like this? Because they're talking about mitzvah that God was communicating with Moses on the mountain. And which mountain? It's Mount Sinai. So the Midrash says that the reason Hashem chose to give the Torah on Mount Sinai is because Mount Sinai was a smaller mountain, and Hashem was teaching us that to really become a vessel to receive Torah, we need to have humility. And that's why the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. So the question is, if the Torah needs to be given in a place that is indicating humility, why not just give it in the valley? Because a valley is a lower place, right? So obviously we're saying Sinai is the smallest of the mountains. However, it's still a mountain, and a mountain is a high place, which is not so much speaking of humility and lowliness. And our parsha, this week's first parsha of the double parsha, is Behar. And it doesn't even clarify that it's Mount Sinai, the smallest of the mountains. So it's not kind of speaking about humility. So to explain this, the need for humility in the service of Hashem varies according to each person's level of knowledge and their spiritual growth. So generally speaking, when we come to spiritual levels, and there's a beginner who's their study and their practice they've not really attained the mindset and the personality that everything is totally in harmony, and it's a challenge. And at this point, ego kind of gets in their way, because ego is a challenge for them. So at that point, they can't really have ego in a sense. So then you get a person reaches the level of an intermediate, that this person, they've already really refined their personality and started to really understand the values of the spiritual life that we live, and they've attained much more knowledge. So while they obviously have humility, and it's a very dominant feature, at certain times they may need to use their ego in a certain instances, especially to protect their spirituality, or whenever they may see fit, and they know that they really need it at that moment. But nevertheless, even though they may need to use their ego at that time, they need to temper it with humility, so they shouldn't be arrogant or selfish. And then the third level is when a person gets too advanced. That's when a person has really transformed their mind and their body, that they're completely in alignment with the values of Torah and Hashem, and the ego is not even a threat to their relationship with Hashem. And if they would exercise their ego, like let go of it, they would, by using their ego in a sense, they're really only using it in the service of Hashem, and to reinforce and strengthen their personality, which is totally dedicated to Hashem and the Torah. So that's why our Parsha is called Behar, without even clarifying that it was Mount Sinai, the smallest mountain. The Torah is teaching us that every single one of us in our nation has the power and the capability to become a spiritual giant, that we can, and we really don't even need, hopefully at that point when we reach that level, we don't need to worry about our humility, so to speak, and we can really, because we're in complete alignment with Hashem. So in the Parsha, it says, Ki tavo al ha'aretz, you will come to the land, Veshavta ha'aretz Shabbat l'Hashem, and the land will rest, a rest for Hashem. And then it says 6 years you plant your seed, you sow, and the 7th year you will have a Shemitah year. So the question is, why does it right away say that the land will right away rest, a Shabbat to Hashem, right? It says it right away before the 6 years of planting. So the answer to this is, why does it say Shabbat first, even though the Shabbat, the 7th year, that's what the Shabbat means, just like the Shabbat is the 7th day, the 7th year, which is the resting year, is the Shabbat. Even though it's at the end of the 6 years, it's teaching us that when we come to the land, what does it mean? We're establishing our way of life. We're working with the soil. We're working in the physical world. What is necessary? To bear in mind that our goal and the idea is, the whole point of coming to the physical world is to prepare a Shabbat to Hashem. Our point of coming into this physical world is to, within the physicality, seek the goodness and seek the spirituality in all situations, even, God forbid, the situation we're in now, that we have to kind of seek out, what's the good I see in this? What's the spiritual in this? And with that approach, it ensures that we don't get sunk in by the material and the mundane, and because we're keeping the focus on Hashem, that on the rest, that He wants us to like create this Shabbat, this rest to Hashem in this physical. And this helps us in the 6 working years, that they lose their drabness and they become more refined and meaningful. And this helps us that when we reach the 7th year, we're able to lift it to a higher level. And obviously this is like, we have our material preoccupations. We need to earn a living. We need to eat and drink. And these are aspects where we're kind of the same as an animal, right? We need to do physical. But there's also this area of earthly rest that we begin each day, and the approach that obviously we're going to get into the mundane. The point of these things is to reach the level of Shabbat to Hashem, that we can, in the mundane, in the physical, we can have refinement, we can achieve real content, and really feel the holiness and the godliness inside of them. So when we do go back to the spiritual, we're elevating all that physical that we were involved in. And this helps us to really reach a level of a complete and harmonious life. So these lessons that we're speaking about in this week's Parsha of Shabbat, the resting, and the sabbatical year, there's a difference between Shabbat and the Shemitah, the 7th year, the sabbatical year. Shabbat, one of the main points of Shabbat is emphasizing that Hashem is the creator of the world. That we say, for in 6 days, in the Kiddush, we say, in 6 days Hashem made the heaven and the earth. On the contrary, the sabbatical year shows that Hashem is the master of the world now as at all times. And that the man is kind of proving by letting go of his field, he's saying that I own nothing and everything is in the possession of Hashem, because he's renouncing ownership to his properties, and he's saying the produce, I'm letting go of it, it's ownerless, everyone can eat it equally. And so in other words, the sabbatical year, the 7th year, is emphasizing, although Hashem has given the earth to man for food and for use, we must remember that Hashem is still in charge. As it says in Psalms 24, the earth and everything in it belongs to Hashem. And in order to emphasize and to strengthen this awareness that we know that Hashem is really the boss, and that we could bring it into our daily life, Hashem set aside the 7th year as a Shabbat, like here, that we don't work the land, and the owner of the land doesn't claim possession, and he becomes equal with everyone. Everyone is equal. Anyone can come into his field and eat. It's not his. And that is him kind of showing that Hashem is the master of the world. And the purpose of these mitzvot is really to fuse the infinite. By doing these things, we fuse the infinite, which is godliness, with the finite. And that's why we're always fluctuating between 6 days of working in the finite physical world and the day of Shabbat, when we lift ourselves above the world and we dedicate the day to Hashem. On a deeper level, the sabbatical year represents a greater fusion of the infinite and the finite than the weekly Shabbat. Why? On Shabbat, a person is disconnected from worldly matters, right? We don't work. On the sabbatical year, a person can work. He just can't do field labor. He can do other work though. But the work becomes more refined with that spiritual awareness of the sabbatical year. So the second parsha of this double parsha is Bechukotai. If you will pursue my laws, if you go in my laws. And Rashi explains that, what does it really mean if you, because it says, Im Bechukotai telechu, if you will go in my laws. Rashi says that means that, what do you mean go in Hashem's laws? That we really toil in the study of Torah and we push ourselves to reach higher levels in the study of Torah, because Torah is one with Hashem. So through studying Torah, we begin to know Hashem. So it doesn't, obviously it's not just referring to the basic requirement of observing the mitzvot, because that's the second half of the verse, because it says, guard my commandments and observe them. Rather, we're learning here that in addition to the basic observance of the mitzvot, we immerse ourselves with the dedication of toiling in the study of Torah. We really work hard in the study of Torah and all other mitzvot as well. So Bechukotai is representing a higher level of keeping the mitzvot, where we're really putting all of our energy and concentration in these mitzvot. And that's why Bechukotai is connected to the word chok, chakika. Chok is like the highest laws that we don't even understand. That is from the word chakika, is engraving. Ink that's written on paper, it's separate. The ink and the paper are two separate things. It's just that the ink made an impression on the paper. Whereas when you engrave words on stone, the words and the stone become one thing. So too, this person who's completely immersed in the observance of a mitzvah and completely gives himself over to this mitzvah, you become one entity with the mitzvah. You're becoming engraved in it. It's becoming engraved in you. And this teaches us a lesson about how we should really do our best to observe the mitzvot in the best and most perfect way. And we do not find this by any other name in any other parsha. Because Parashat Mishpatim, we read that in the book of Exodus, it only speaks about rational laws. Parashat Chukat, Chukat is speaking about one mitzvah in particular, the red heifer. That's not talking about all the mitzvot in general. Only Parashat Bechukotai is giving us a general message about observing all the mitzvot in this best possible way, in a way that they become engraved in our soul and we become one with a mitzvah. And that's why Bechukotai is a good end. This is the last parsha of Vayikra. And we'll say, Chazak, Chazak, Vanit Chazak, come strong, strong, and please help us get stronger. Because Vayikra is a book which stresses the observance of mitzvot more than any other book of Torah, by the fact that Vayikra, Leviticus, the third book, has more laws and less narrative, less stories than any of the other 4 books of the Torah. Thank you guys for listening. Always a pleasure. Thank you, David and Louise. God bless you all. Have a great night, and may we hear good news. Thank you so much. God bless.